nations in Europe and dictators kind of taking control, and then the war in Europe starting, which was in 1939. And now we're going to talk about America entering the war. Now, what I talked about in the video that you guys watched yesterday or 2 days ago, it was America kind of and FDR kind of preparing for the war. So FDR knew that eventually we were going to get involved in the war, and he was kind of preparing the nation for it. He was also preparing, trying to build up the nation's economy by selling goods to the warring nations. Okay, and he met with Churchill to kind of figure out how to deal with Hitler. And again, this happens before Pearl Harbor. So Pearl Harbor is going to be the start of America's official entry into the war. And the attack of Pearl Harbor was a surprise attack by the Japanese on the naval base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Okay, now prior to this, America kind of froze out trade with Japan because the Japanese were taking over most of Asia and the islands in the Pacific. Okay, and America wasn't going to support that. America had territories there. America had allies there, so they weren't going to support Japan economically. So they kind of freeze up the Japanese, and Japan's going to be frustrated by that. Now, Japan also was, again, part of the Axis alliance, which was Italy, Germany, and Japan, which Hitler eventually wanted to have to deal with the United States. He knew he had to deal with the United States. Currently, though, he was dealing with both Great Britain and the Soviet Union, because if you remember, he attacked the Soviet Union, breaking the non-aggression pact they had. So Japan's going to kind of take the role of attacking the United States and getting them involved in the war, which some Japanese in the army did not agree with. The admiral of the Navy at the time didn't want to attack Pearl Harbor. He was ordered to attack Pearl Harbor, and afterwards he said we just awoke a sleeping giant, because he knew that America getting involved in the war was not at this point was not a good thing, because again, the Axis nations were still trying to expand, and they were spreading themselves pretty thin. Now you're going to bring the most powerful nation in the world, one of the most powerful nations of the world, we weren't a superpower yet, into the war. So what's going to happen is they're going to attack on it's a Sunday. Okay, most of the troops are sleeping or they're awake at mass. Okay, and it's going to be a surprise attack, so they don't know that the Japanese are coming, obviously. And they start bombing the airfields, and they start bombing the ships. The ships are just sitting there in the harbor, docked. The guns are locked because there wasn't any reason to have them unlocked. So they're not going to be prepared for it. So there's two waves, I think, that hit them. There's a third wave that was called off, I believe. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to get it wrong. But I know for sure two waves attacked, and the third wave, I think, was called off. Now, what's going to happen is about 2,400 Americans are killed. All right, a lot of them are just stuck in the ships that get hit and eventually get sunk, like the USS Arizona. That's the most famous one that you guys probably heard of, because it's still there in Pearl Harbor. It's a memorial. It's like this big white building on top of the ship that's in the harbor. You can go look it up. I don't know if it's open anymore, because there was a big crack in it. And again, the ship is underneath. It's actually still leaking oil to this day, but it's deteriorating. It's all rust, so it's not gonna be there for forever. So if you want to just go look that up, maybe I'll kind of link a video into this. So what's gonna happen the next day is FDR is gonna ask Congress to declare war, and we're gonna declare war on Japan. Hitler then declares war on us. We declare war on Hitler, and then now we're in the war. Okay, in his speech, he says December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, blah, 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 blah. And then that's where he asks Congress for a declaration of war, which they then approve. Okay, this is another turning point in the war. All right, the other turning point that I talked about was when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, because that was the farthest he would extend his territory, because he got stopped because of the winters. So I talked about that in the last video. This is another turning point, because once the United States gets involved, you're going to have all these fresh troops coming in. They're going to be slowly pushing back the Japanese and slowly pushing back the Germans. Okay? So what we're going to see is a mobilization. Mobilization is kind of the country's preparation for war, both in a military aspect and also civilian aspect. So civilians are going to be, they're going to start rationing. They're going to start going to work in factories that are building goods for the war. So say Ford, for example, Ford isn't going to be producing cars, they're going to be producing tanks, okay, or airplanes. And just simple things like that. Just factories that were producing, I don't know, sewing machines are now producing M1 Garands, which is a gun, okay, or machine guns, Thompsons, whatever they are. And okay, I kind of just talks about what I have to read, but automakers now make trucks, jeeps, and tanks, okay, and planes. So kind of what I just said is right there, and goods are now being produced for the war effort. So same idea. We saw this in World War One, okay, and kind of talking about the woman here. We saw the woman and their role in World War One, okay. Once the men go off to war, it's the women who are the ones at home, kind of running the country. Um, but the difference this time is that a lot of the women are going to get involved in the army. Okay, so you're going to have the Women's Army Corps, okay, and they're going to be nurses, secretaries, and they're actually going to go over to where the fighting is happening. So they're not going to be on the front lines, but they'll be kind of in the bases uh, behind the front lines. So say in the Pacific, they attack Midway, we take back Midway, we set up a base there. You're going to have a lot of women there who are running the hospitals as the men are moving island to island, and then they're sent back to kind of get healthy, and the women are going to be the ones running those. They also work as secretaries for generals and officers, okay? And these are important roles compared to, I think, in World War One and the Civil War, whereas they worked as nurses, but for the most part they weren't playing a major role. So now they're playing more of a major role in the army, okay? And that's in the army. Now at home, it's the same thing as in World War One and the Civil War. They're the ones who are now running the factories. They're the ones who are running the homes. Now they're already running the homes, but now they're working the men's jobs and then doing their own jobs at home. And the personification of woman during this time would be Rosie the Riveter, who is depicted in the top right here. Okay, so you guys have all seen this. Okay, you can technically call this propaganda, but it's really just to get women to work in either factory or work for the army. Okay, it's kind of positive. It's American propaganda. Right, so it's trying to sway people's opinion towards let's help the war effort. Okay, kind of continuing with the war, the home front. Okay, making sacrifices. We talked about this last video. Roosevelt's going to implement the Selective Service Act, which is when men from the ages of 21 to 35 are drafted into the army. That's going to continue, but you're going to have people younger than 21. You're going to have a lot of 18-year-olds who are not inspired, but after Pearl Harbor, they want to go and fight for America. Okay? You see something similar after 9/11 when the World Trade Center was attacked. You had a lot of people the next day just going up and signing up to protect the country. So you're going to have the same thing here. Okay, after Pearl Harbor, a lot of people the next day go sign up to join the army. Okay? And then I talked about rations like 2 slides ago, even though it wasn't written down. So rations, consumers buy a limited amount of good. Gasoline, meat, tires. The reason they're buying less goods is so that more goods are being sent to the soldiers off in Europe and the Pacific. And it says right there in the central photo, do with less so they'll have enough. And it's a soldier drinking whatever that is, probably hot chocolate or something. Chocolate was actually really important during the war. I can't remember if I have a slide on it or not, but Hershey made this kind of chocolate bar that was, it really wasn't that big, but it was like thick, and it had some ridiculous amount. I can't remember the exact amount of calories, but I think typical Hershey bar probably has like 260, 300 calories. This Hershey bar had like 1,000 calories, and the reason being was it was something small that the troops could eat to kind of give them energy. Again, calories gives your body energy. See, I gotta see. I'm gonna see if I have that slide. maybe in here. I remember showing the kids last year. It's disgusting. It doesn't look good. And it didn't really taste good either. It didn't taste like chocolate. It didn't meant to be. It was just meant to give them energy. Okay. Um, okay. So African Americans in the war, you you had African Americans who fought in the World War One. You had African Americans who fought in the Civil War, but it wasn't to a large extent. The African Americans who fought in the Civil War, a lot of them were former slaves or slaves who ran from the South and joined the Northern Army. Um, in the Civil War, in World War One, you did have African Americans who fight, but it wasn't to a large extent. And this war, though, you have about 1 million Africans who are uh, African Americans who are fighting. But the army is segregated still at this point. So we're in 1940s. You're not going to see the army desegregated until after the war. And the most famous kind of group that I think is most well known to this day is Tuskegee Airmen. Tuskegee coming from there's like a Tuskegee Institute, which is a school which is set up by oh man, I'm having a brain fart. Oh, don't tell me. I know it because he met with Theodore Roosevelt. He was the first African American to have dinner at the White House. Oh, it's gonna bother me. Let me just think for a second. It wasn't W.B. Du Bois. Booker T. All right, so it's Booker T. Booker T. um, Booker T set up the T. Oh, no, I'm getting off point. Not the point. All right, so the Tuskegee Airmen was the most well-known fighter group in the Air Force. And what's gonna happen also with in the home front, you're gonna have a lot of African Americans who move from southern cities to northern cities to fill the roles in the factories that most of the white men are leaving to go fight. Okay, and that's the answer to why there. Um, and they're still experiencing discrimination and racism both at home and in the army. And we're going to talk about civil rights. Let's say April. We should really get to civil rights era in this class before you guys are done for the year. So we're going to talk more about that. Okay. Sorry, I just got to send a message. Okay. So Japanese Americans, again, we're still focusing on the home front before we get to battles. And let me see. Yeah, so we'll kind of just do this and we'll be done. Now, what's going to happen with Japanese Americans is they're actually going to be put into internment camps, which are depicted here and here. And this is particularly in the western part of the United States. The reason for this is there was a fear that the Japanese, especially early on after Pearl Harbor, would try to attack California. Okay, and that the Japanese Americans who lived there, okay, would try to aid in this invasion, which wasn't true. So you had, it says, and you see, those are the people, American citizens who were born in the United States, but their parents were from Japan. These people had lived their entire life in the United States. They did not plan on attacking, helping attack the United States. But there was a lot of discrimination issues in America at the time. People were fearful that they were going to try to help. So what happens is we take them, we put them in internment camps. Okay, so about 100,000 Japanese Americans, again, particularly in the West Coast, are relocated into detention centers, and the conditions were harsh. This is not, you can't compare this to what's going on in Europe because we weren't sending them there to die. Okay, where you have the death camp and the work camps, the concentration camps in Europe, the Hitler is sending Jews, Gypsies, POWs, and anyone who spoke out against them. They were going there to die, essentially. We weren't sending Japanese Americans to die, but we were essentially putting them in, you can almost say jail if you want to. And it's a bad look. And something similar, again, something similar to this happens after 9/11 when you have a lot of people who looked like they were Middle Eastern, and there was discrimination put towards them as well. But again, kind of going back to what we're talking about. Um, yeah, Japanese Americans are treated poorly. After the war, actually, they are, again, this doesn't rectify anything, but the American government attempted to rectify it. They ended up getting money. Those who were put in internment camps were ended up given money by the American government. It didn't fix anything. It's a bad look. This is definitely something that is like a black spot in American history because it's just not a good look. Okay? So, again, if you kind of had to think about it for yourself, let's go back in time to January 1942. How do we feel about Japanese people living in America after the attack on Pearl Harbor? Okay, and here I think like a year ago, 2 years ago, someone wrote down this. Okay, um, and these are the two sides. So you have the equality side, which is all Americans deserve freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. And again, you have to remember these are American citizens. These are people who were born in the United States. And again, most of the Japanese people have lived here for generations. Okay, you had those who their parents were born in Japan, but they were born in the United States. They were still put away. Um, and again, they did not attack us. The Japanese country did. Okay, I forget who wrote these. Someone in the eighth grade, like 2 years ago, I think. And then for hatred, these people attacked and killed thousands. All Japanese hate the United States. They're not on the side. They are on the side of Japan, not the USA. And I would say this side is irrational thinking because um, the Japanese who lived here were American citizens. It wasn't. Look, were there probably a few that were loyal to Japan? Yeah, but very. I don't. It was probably such a small percentage. There's not an issue. Um, so again, big takeaways from today that I want you guys to write about. You gotta write about the Japanese internment camps. Um, you gotta write about Tuskegee Airmen. Write about women. Okay, both in the armed forces and also women just at home helping out. Okay. Again, Pearl Harbor is our entry into the war, and mobilization is really important. So in your summary for the notes, you can write that. All right, we're going to actually talk about the fighting that's going to take place in Europe. All right, we're going to start in Africa. Talk about that tomorrow. All right.